Hey friends, my name is Lisa if we haven't met, and if we have, welcome back to my pottery studio. I am so glad you're here. Frankly, I'm glad I'm here because I've been working way too much lately and I need to play in clay. I need to play in clay today. I have a project that's been rattling around in my brain for a little bit now, and I want to make some little salt and pepper shaker jars. I saw this on, I tend to binge watch YouTube, and one thing I really love to watch is like cooking shows and cooking channels. And this one lady had these cute little ceramic bottles that had little cork stoppers in them and little holes on the shoulder of the bottle for like salt and pepper. And I want to make them. I want them in my house. I need to have these. So that's the project today. I'm also going to make some colored slip because I think for these bottles, I'm just going to single fire them. So for surface decoration, I do want to apply a little bit of color. So I'm going to make a colored slip to kind of dip them in to give them some interest. So that should be interesting. In order to make these, I am going to throw them off the hump because they're going to be somewhat smaller. So it's a little bit more challenging to throw directly on the wheel head. I haven't thrown off the hump in like 100 years. So we'll see how that goes. It should be entertaining. Hope you stick around. We're going to have some fun. Let's go. Okay guys, first things first, I'm going to get some clay wedged up. So get my apron on. Let's get set up. My splash pan on. Power's good. All right, so throwing off the hump. I haven't done this in a while, as I mentioned. What that means is that I'm going to center a large chunk of clay, but then I'm just going to throw from like the very, very top of that clay to form the bottles that I want to make for my salt and pepper shakers. This is probably about 6 pounds of clay. The good thing is you don't have to center the whole thing. You just have to center the part you're going to throw from. And then once you get the form you want, you just cut that off, put it off to the side, and then you have your clay start centering again. It's kind of fun. I don't want it to come popping off, so I'm going to do a little smear along the bottom there, you know, so the whole thing doesn't come flying off the wheel. So you center just like you normally would. You're just kind of pretending like that your wheel head is like right about there. Now I'm trying to think about how big I really want these bottles. And I don't want them too large. They're not going to be like, almost like little kind of cute little salt and pepper shakers that maybe you would have like at a big Thanksgiving table. You'd have like several of them out. So I'll probably try and throw a good handful of them and see what works. So what I'm doing, I got this centered. So I'm creating kind of an imaginary point to where the bottom of my piece is going to be. As I open up, just doing 2 little fingers in the top, and I'm going to pretend like where that bottom is going to be where the bottom of my pot is. It's hard to tell exactly, but as we pull up, you can get a sense more for where the bottom is, and that makes it a little bit easier. But you can place bets on how long it takes before I have clay on my face. Now the goal is to collar in the top so I have a nice shoulder on the bottle and then a little like lip that I can put a cork in, and that'll be what's used to keep the salt and pepper in the bottle. Now this rim is a little bit thicker than what I want, so where's my pin tool? So I'm going to take a little bit of clay just off of the rim here because it's just bulkier than what I want. Now I want kind of a shoulder on the bottle because that's where I want to put the little holes for the shaker part of this component. So I'm going to try and flare that out a little bit more. All right, I think that's kind of what I'm going for. A little rib to the edge here. So what we're going to do is cut it off. Hope we don't cut into the bottom of it. So where that is, go through, and then I do a second cut, which just gives me like a little bit of a disc. And that way I'm not deforming the bottom of that vessel, the bottom of my jar as I take it off. And then as it dries, I can just take that little cookie that's stuck to the bottom off. So I was not thinking ahead. I don't have a wear board. Gosh, dang it. We'll just set you right back down for a second. All right, there we go. Let's be smart. All right, we're gonna try and do another bottle, same as the first. I actually think it'll be kind of cute if they don't match exactly. I'm not actually too worried about making them identical, but I suppose they either need to be dramatically different or identical. Otherwise it could look kind of odd. When I do things like this, I often like to throw like several pieces and then kind of match them up afterwards, see which pair look the best together, that kind of thing. When you're coloring in like that, I think it's always important to think about 3 points of contact. So I have my sponge in my hand, like here, and this knuckle is actually doing a lot of work. Then my 2 thumbs are kind of together, working together, and then I'm pinching really on this side of my other finger. So, but always think about 3 points of contact when you're coloring in. All right. I almost didn't think we were going to keep that one, but so I should have gone to Hobby Lobby and gotten the corks first so that I could have a kind of a visual and see how big they were. Problem with me and going to Hobby Lobby is it's $2 a minute. That's what I've determined is $2 a minute every time I go in there. Doesn't matter if I spend 30 minutes in there, it's $60. If I spend an hour in there, it's $120. It just happens. Like a law of physics or something. And oh, cute. I think they're gonna be cute. Let's throw a handful more. So I had to go to Atlanta last week for work. I tell you, I've been working way too much lately. I don't like it. The funny story of that trip is that I got all the way to the Denver airport and going through TSA, and then I realized I didn't have my laptop. I forgot my laptop at home. Now this is for work. Like I work on my laptop. I'm on it all the time. So I'm in TSA and I'm like too embarrassed to turn around right there, but I go through TSA and I just stand there for a little bit going like, what is gonna be the least inconvenient thing to do? Try to work for the week without my laptop, which was a serious consideration because I was going to a conference and I usually don't have my laptop like in the conference with me, but I was still thinking of the things I'd need to get done that might require it. Or going back home, getting it, coming back, finding another flight, getting into Atlanta really late. So I made the call to go without my laptop. So I had to work for 3 days just off of my phone. But then I get to Atlanta and it's later at night and I'm unpacking a little bit and I realize I forgot my pajamas too. Oh my gosh, 3 nights without my pajamas. I don't know about you, but I don't sleep well without my jams. And honestly, if I had known at TSA that I didn't have my pajamas and my laptop, I probably would have turned around and gone home and rebooked my flight. But there we were. We do what we have to do, don't we? Do it again. Okay, now we're good. Cross your fingers. I think I did it again. Oh, Lisa, what is wrong with this? I don't know. I can't quite tell. Maybe I did though. Nope, we're okay. We're okay. It's thin though. I think on this one I'm going to try and make it a little bit more bulbous. I'm just going to try and make it a little bit more like a spherical bottle. You know what I'm talking about? Like, oh boy. Using my inside finger here to kind of push it out as I'm using my right hand to kind of collar in a little bit. Not really collar in, but try to push in a little bit, creating a really more dramatic shoulder. right, well, I've got all this clay on my bat, so might as well make something out of it. Let's go for, I don't know, what should we go for? Maybe a bigger bottle. We've been throwing bottles, so we'll just go with a bigger bottle. All right, well, I've got 6 small shaker bottles, salt shaker bottles. I've got 1 big bottle for, I don't know. And we're gonna let these dry till tomorrow, hopefully. All right, it's time to get cleaned up. Okay, friends, so here are the bottles that we got for our little salt and pepper shakers. I hope you can kind of see how they're gonna come along now. So they're gonna set up tonight. I'm going to keep an eye on them because I do want them to dry enough that I can dip them into some colored slip tomorrow. So I'm excited. We'll see how they come out. We're going to take a break and round 2 coming up. Okay, friends, it is the next day and our bottles have been setting up pretty nicely. Pretty good leather hard. They're still just a little bit soft, but I want to show you. So if you remember when I cut them off the wheel, I cut a little disc underneath it, and you see how that got all mangled when I took it off the hump. Sorry, not off the wheel, off the hump. But what I can do now is just take that away, and I have a pretty good bottom to start trimming with. It's not going to be all like janky and hard to trim up. So because there was a thick amount of clay stuck to the bottom, this is still a little bit soft, so I'll probably put all these on plaster for just a little bit, let them dry up just a little bit more before I get on the wheel and trim them. Okay, our bottles need a little time to dry up, get a little firmer, so we're going to set them off to the side. And while we're waiting on those, I'm going to mix up my colored slip. I am going to use something called mason stain. So mason stains are also called inclusion stains, I believe. And I've done some testing with them before. And so essentially I'm going to mix up some slip and I'm going to add some colorant to it. So these are some samples that I've done in the past, but effectively I just mixed up some liquid slip and then added some of the mason stain to it and got this cool color. Mason stains, when you buy them, usually come in a little plastic bag. Might look something kind of like this. In the world of glaze chemistry, in order to get different colors for our glazes, there's a lot of natural earth elements that we can add into our glaze materials that will create color. So you think of like cobalt. Cobalt's going to give you a blue. Chrome is going to get you a green. Copper can kind of get you a green as well. Red iron oxide can get you like a brown reddish tone. And then for some of the more challenging colors like reds and purples, it takes a good combination of chemical elements. So red, you might be looking at chrome and tin in a high calcium glaze, and so there's a lot of research and a lot of study over all the many years of ceramics that have gone into creating glazes and glaze colors. Now with a mason stain, it's kind of a cheat, but I don't think anything in pottery is really cheating, but effectively the chemistry has been done for you, right? So in order to get this beautiful green color, someone has already done all the chemistry and testing to identify how to get this color. They've created the glaze, and then the stain is basically that glaze ground up into a fine powder that then you can add into a slip or a glaze. What we're gonna do, I'm trying to think about how much material I'll actually need. My goal would be to take one of these bottles and completely dip it, and then have almost like dipping a glaze, but dipping it in the slip and having it come out and having like a nice even line of, the color. So in these tests that I've done in the past, you'll see I've done 2 of each stain that I already have. And this one is at 6%, this one's at 3%. You can kind of tell there isn't a tremendous difference, right? Maybe a little bit deeper, richer color on the 6%. And basically what that means is that for 100 grams of dry material, I'll add 3 grams or 6 grams of the mason stain. So I think I'm definitely going to do this green because this is one of my favorites. It is called Celadon. It's a Celadon stain. It's made by Laguna. And I'm going to go with 6% of this. So, and when I say dry material, to make my slip, this is just trimmings that I've saved and I've kept in this bag. And then I in the bag crushed them up with like a rolling pin or a mallet or whatever you want to get kind of a fine clay material, clay powder. You want to use the same clay body that you threw with. And I should probably wear a mask, so hold on. I like my lungs, so, but it's gonna be hard to talk, so we'll figure this out. What I'm gonna do, get my scale and make sure it's set to grams. I'm gonna put this cup on top of it and zero it out. And I'm just gonna see what 100 grams looks like, and I'm gonna start with that. So I'm gonna try 200 grams. I think we're gonna go 300 grams. So I'm gonna do 300 grams because that looks like it's gonna give me enough material to fully dip part of my bottles into. So I'm gonna do 3 different colors. So I'm gonna mix up three more containers. Got 300 grams of each one measured out there. I wanna do the green I mentioned. I think I'm also gonna do this tangerine color. And then I'm debating if I wanna do just a black one or a brown one. I'm gonna do the brown. I think it's gonna be cool, so. Okay, now for measuring out the mason stains, these little sauce cups that you get, these are a wonderful thing to have in a glazed chemistry studio. You can save them from your takeout, but you can also order them online. I'm gonna use these to measure out the mason stains. So, and again, it's 6%, so I've got 300 grams. So I would do 6 grams for every 100, so that's 3 times 6, which is 18, right? 18 grams, yes. Bigger scoop here. Now for each of these, I'm gonna start with 50% water, which means that for a 300 gram batch of my clay body, I'm gonna add 150 grams of water. So we're gonna start with that. I'm also gonna add some Darvan to help deflocculate it, which will help separate some of the clay particles and help get a more liquid consistency, because I don't wanna add any more water than I have to, but I'm gonna go with 50%, at least on the first one. We'll do one at a time, so if I really screw up one, I can just remake it, not remake all 3. So 150 grams of water. I'll go with that. We'll pour it in and we will let it just settle for a second and we'll see what it looks like. For this part, I am going to be cautious about my eyes. Start very slowly. So at this point, it is quite thick, but before I add more water, I'm going to see if I can add a couple drops of Darvan to get it to liquefy. That's probably maybe 1/4 teaspoon. It's really, I don't use very much at all. I'm gonna switch to a regular blender because this is a pain to clean up. Hang on. Okay, so let's try this. This feels a little bit riskier, but because of the thickness I want on this slip, this might be the better way to go. So cross your fingers, people. Okay. All right. Yes. Okay. Because that clay body is so thick, I think it was a little bit much for the immersion blender. Good old kitchen blender to the rescue. It might take a little bit longer to get it fully incorporated though, so. All right, so we will set this aside. And I'm gonna do the same thing for the next one. I like that consistency, so I'm gonna stick with the 50% water. This could quickly turn into a very big mess. There we go. Okay, so now this is like the thickness of a very thick icing, like if you're icing a cake, right? Now you can imagine that if I dipped a bottle in this and it came back up, it's gonna have like large globs on it, right? Which is not what we want. We wanna dip it in and have it come out like kind of like a glaze, almost. The magic of Darvan, we did this on the last one. I'm gonna try to do maybe 1/4 teaspoon. That seemed to work pretty well. If you want to go back and learn a little bit more about flocculation and deflocculation and creating slip, I made a whole video on making stick-up slip. That's the slip that I use for attaching handles and stuff like that. I'm getting ready to run an experiment on the different attachment slip styles, methods, to see if that really makes a difference. But I've always used stick-up slip. And the process to create that's kind of similar to what we're doing here. It goes a little bit further, but what you'll see now with that Darvan added, it's getting a lot more liquidy, which is going to be much better for the dipping process. So now we've gone from a very thick icing to like almost a pancake batter, maybe even thinner than a pancake batter, which is perfect. All right, I think our bottles are doing it pretty good. Maybe still a little soft on the bottom, but we're gonna go ahead and give it a try and see what we can get trimmed up. If you have been looking for an excuse to buy a Giffen grip, I'm gonna provide your excuse, because there's no better way to trim bottles, in my opinion, than with a Giffen grip. I won't be able to show you the final product on this video because I want to get this video edited and published and out for you guys, and it'll take a while before I probably get these fired. But I promise if you subscribe, I will show you when these come out of the kiln. I'll do a highlight video, but look how cute. Look at that. All right, one thing I've done that is maybe a little bit extra is I want to have an S and a P on each one so you know which one is salt and which one is pepper, because there's nothing more annoying than like having, you know, really modern, cool looking salt and pepper shakers, but then you don't know which one is which and you like, oh, that's pepper. So I've printed out these little S's out of paper. So I printed this. I have a Silhouette Cameo that is basically a Cricut. And so I just went into the app and created little S's and little P's, and I did some different fonts that I can play with. And what I'm going to do is just put the paper onto each one with a little bit of water. And then after I dip this in the slip, I can peel that off, and hopefully I'll have the negative, like the clay body will come through to be the S and the P. So it's looking pretty good, but I'm going to do a little test with my hand. Okay, so you know what? It's coming out quite, it's still got some good clumps in it. I was hoping after it sat for a bit that wouldn't happen, but I am going to get my immersion blender back out and give it a quick zap with that. I might add a little bit more water. I just need to get it to the right consistency. So when I take this little dude and I dip it in there, it's going to come up and it's going to have a nice smooth surface. I'm going to go with this S font like that. And what I'm going to do is just a little water on my hand. Oops. Ooh. It's still a little thick. I would maybe add a little bit more water. You can still see where the S is, so that's good. I don't want to lose that. I need to be able to peel it off. But all right, test one. Not bad, not bad. I'm gonna add another 5 milliliters of water. Probably should have put these on at the same time so I remembered how high they were, but oh well. Got too excited. All right, I stirred this a little bit to get bubbles out, see if that helps, but ooh, I think that's a little bit better. Now, when these are dry, because it will be clay, I mean, it is clay. It will be clay. It is clay. But when it dries up, I can kind of smooth it out with my finger a little bit, maybe with a little bit of a sponge. I don't want to wipe it off, of course, but I'm not too worried about those little bubbles that we have. All right. taking a little bit longer to dry than what I was thinking they would. So I took a break. I got my nails painted. I did cover them in plastic very loosely, so I just used some kiln posts here. I just didn't want the plastic like touching the slip and, you know, sticking to it. So while these are drying up a little bit more, I also need to be thinking about making the little holes for this salt and pepper to actually like shake out of. I've commandeered this drill bit set from my husband. Hope he's okay with that. But I'm gonna look at, okay, the smallest one is 1/16. That's the tiniest little bit that I can use. If that shrinks by, say, 12% for this clay body, will that just close up and not be big enough for salt to get through? So I'm gonna go to ChatGPT. If I have a hole that's 1/16 of an inch and it shrinks by 12%, will a grain of salt fit through it? Oh my God, it's doing it. The shrunken hole size is 0.05 inches, is larger than the size of a grain of salt. A grain of salt will indeed fit through the hole. I'm gonna assume that a grain of salt and a grain of pepper is gonna be the same size. So we're gonna go with the smallest one possible. So let's see, I'm thinking that with the pea facing me, I would shake like this, and I'm gonna put my holes right up here. Okay, friends, I think this is where I'm going to leave you for today, but I am pretty excited with how these little guys have come out. But I'm going to fiddle with them a little bit more probably. They still need to dry up just a little bit more, and I'm going to take a little rib around and just clean up some of the like bubbles that happened and smooth off the bottom a little bit more. But I think these are going to be like super cute little salt and pepper shakers, and I'll get a photo here at the end. I need to get going. Thank you so much for hanging out with me. Thank you so much for being here. It means the world to me that you'd spend your time to hang out with me in the studio, and let me know if this is ever a project that you might try. I would love to know what you think. All right, friends, take care. Have a great day. Bye.